feel like our intro music is like one of the calmest parts of the week. That's what I was gonna say.
Right? I was thinking
Yeah.
about that as we were dancing, and our longtime listeners will know we recently switched our intro music, and I think it's appropriate right now. Like, we just need some chill and some
Yeah.
calm, and it makes me think of, okay, it's time to get our cup of tea or our glass of
Yeah.
water and just take a pause. Like, take a pause in this madness and check in with each other and see how we are. So, how are you, friend?
I'm good. It's interesting. I don't have anything to drink right now. And I know we're on episode 213. I don't think that has ever happened, Christine. It's crazy. So,
Where
listeners,
is
if
your
you,
water?
I know. If you have a drink or something, do the water check in for me, and I will get mine after this. But, um, I'm great. I'm so grateful to be here. It's 5 years. Oh my goodness. Can you
5
believe how quick?
years.
I know. And
5 years.
I was talking to Pharaoh earlier. I was looking forward to this moment when all the businesses were
Mhm.
flipping over to 5 years. We know a lot of businesses, most businesses don't make it to this point. And I have found out a couple of reasons why over the last 5 years. I'm like, this is why they don't make it. It makes sense. So I'm super excited to be celebrating 5 years with you and talking about intellectual wellness. How do we do it
Right,
with beauty, meaning, and joy?
right,
Yeah.
and the world has changed so much in the last 5 years.
My goodness.
Originally, we were set to kick off and go live January 6th, 5 years ago, and something else happened and,
Hmm.
insurrection in our
Right.
nation because 'cause we're broadcasting from the United States, and,
Mhm.
so we decided not to that day because, we were engaged with watching what was going on and responding to the moment, but we did make the conscious decision to start the next week because we felt like in the midst of chaos and in the midst of confusion and
Yeah.
everything that was going on, we needed wellness and conversations and connection more than ever. And I think that holds true 5 years later as
Yeah, it
we
does.
navigate something new pretty much every day.
Every day. No
What in
joke.
the world?
Yes.
So, right?
Yes. How are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm doing great. Last
Good.
week threw me for a loop,
Mm.
with see, I can't even talk. That's how much it just upsets me, like,
It was
with
a
what
lot.
happened
It
in
is
our
a
nation
lot.
and a woman getting killed for really, I'm gonna say nothing, but,
Okay. Yeah.
I've
It's true.
there's a big movement on hashtag on all the socials right now about I saw the video
Oh,
and this
wow.
murder,
Mhm.
and often I don't watch those videos
Mhm.
because I'm a very sensitive body, and
Yeah.
I look at news sources that I trust, but
Yeah.
I did watch the video,
Mm.
and, it's horrifying.
Mhm.
And
I didn't.
especially as women, I
Yeah.
mean, you know, her last words were, "I'm not mad at you." And
Pharaoh said that.
and,
It's crazy.
you know, when you describe her,
Mhm.
Renee Good,
Mhm.
you could be describing me.
Mhm.
Like, similar in ages, poet,
Mhm. Mother.
mom,
Mhm.
mother, wife,
Mhm.
like,
Licensed
so
driver.
right,
Yeah.
licensure. Um,
Oh,
yeah, so, like, that I know it's just impacting so many people,
yeah.
and especially our listeners and
Yeah.
people that care about their
Mhm.
neighbors and each other and our
Yeah.
democracy, and, yeah, and also uplifting that she was not the first person that
Right.
ISIS killed,
Right.
and, there was, a man, a dad, a father that I went and donated to his, I'm saying a lot today. I'm just gonna
It's
go ahead
okay.
and apologize to our listeners and apologize to Sati, who will
Mhm.
be editing this for us. I'm just realizing my brain is tired,
Yeah.
and I think it's tired from grief this
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
I was I was really grumpy earlier this week, and when
Mm.
that it doesn't that's rare for me, so I always
Mhm.
check in with myself, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"Why are you grumpy?"
Mhm.
And I do a lot of grief work. I do a lot of grief work with my clients. It's part of my work in the world, and I really had to sit with the fact that it was grief.
Yeah.
It was grief about all the episodes lately. It's grief about the last 5 years. Not our work together, that's the joy. We
Thankfully,
always talk
yes.
about how I acknowledge that there's grief and joy at the same
Yes.
time, but a lot of grief,
Yeah.
and it's yeah. I just
I hear
didn't
you.
think Shannon, we're different generations and
Yeah.
and different ages, and I just did not think I would see this in my lifetime,
Woo.
and yeah.
Mm,
So,
I hear you.
yeah. But
And
how are you? I'm sorry, that's way long, that's way
no,
more, but, we're real around here, y'all. If you're just
hey,
listening for the first time, if you ask us how we are, we're not gonna say fine.
you know what I mean? It's fine and it's just um and because we're really present, and we're realistic about what's going on in front of us. And there's beauty, and we're talking about the beauty meeting and joy again today. And there's a lot of stuff going on. And
Mhm.
I saw the video. Hashtag I didn't need to see the video to know what happened, and not
Yeah.
to minimize it, not to minimize the situation. That was my vote from where I am as a Black woman and said, oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Do I and you start to think about the research, and it's like, you know what? Let me wait, actually. Let's wait. This week was my dad's how old is dad this year? I'm gonna be 33 this year, so he is 64 on the
Oh, happy
8th.
birthday, dad.
Yes, happy birthday, dad. And it's also tomorrow is the anniversary of a huge person in the family, in Pharaoh's family, right, that I'm joining. And so we could go ahead and talk about it. We've talked about it and we'll do our intro. This is his grandmother that passed away. And it was
Mhm.
crazy because, and that's tomorrow. It was crazy because my mom passed away in November. And then my best friend's mom passed away 7 months after that, the next June. And then after that, the next January, his grandmother passed away. So it was like 6 months,
Yep.
boom,
I
boom,
remember
boom.
that.
It's like, oh
Yep.
my goodness, can we get a
Right.
break? And that was the beginning of COVID.
Right.
um,
Right.
so I hear you on the grief, and I'm super excited about our resource for today, and our just the space that we
Timely.
need to hold. Yeah, it's
So
timely.
timely, the
It's timely.
conversation we're having today. I know I personally need it, and I have a feeling our listeners do too.
Yeah,
So
let's
should
get
we
into
start
it.
this intro and jump on in here?
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Hi, y'all. I'm Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial entrepreneur, Amazon, what is that? Amazon best-selling publisher, author, and all-natural product manufacturer. I'm a champion for your natural self-care, sustainable business care, and overall intentional wellness.
Hi, y'all. I'm Christine Gautreaux, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, best-selling author and publisher, and dancing social worker who helps you upgrade yourself and community care.
Together, we are a podcast rooted in the 8 dimensions of wellness and the co-founders of Women Connected in Wisdom Community.
And we like to get together every week for intentional conversations about how to be wise in business, relationships, and wellness. How do we do it?
Yeah, how do we do it? I love that you can come on and be so honest about where you are this week. And I've been thinking about it for intellectual wellness, and how big events affect my capacity, because that's what we wrote
Mm,
about. That's what I wrote about in volume 2, maximize your
right,
capacity. So yes,
right,
I want to show up and do my best. No, on days when there's a lot of stuff going on, that's not the day to be a superhero. And that is also you doing your best. So
right.
yeah.
Well, and knowing that it's just not one or two people right now. It
Mhm.
is the majority of our country that's struggling or not okay, or trying to be okay, or trying to stand up for democracy at the same time that they're washing, the dishes and the laundry never end.
Oh my goodness. I'm like, how did the Dairy Queen scoop get back? I just finished laundry, but it's back. So I
Right?
hear you. Yeah.
Well, let me give our listeners our definition of intellectual wellness,
Mm.
since it's been a minute since we've
Okay.
talked about it. So,
Yeah.
intellectual wellness includes having access to different sources of information and developing critical thinking and timely decision making skills. I think that's so needed right now in our world, too.
Mm.
Also, continually learning through intentional intellectual growth, situations, and artistic creativity can help maintain one's intellectual capacity.
Yes.
And I'm gonna add in doing LinkedIn games and, Wordle. Just saying.
Yes. Nice. Oh, I forgot about Wordle. I forgot you guys play that. I've still been playing Snake. It's been fun.
All right, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So I see where we are with time. Do you want me to go ahead and read our guest bio, or did you have
Absolutely.
something
Let's
else
do
that you
it.
wanted to add for our listeners?
Let's do it.
Okay, y'all, today we're going to be talking to Laing Rikkers. And Laing Rikkers is an award-winning author, entrepreneur, and executive coach whose personal journey through grief inspired her book, Morning Leaves. Now in its second edition, drawing on creativity, nature, and simple daily rituals. Lang offers a practical and compassionate guide to navigating grief and life's many transitions. Whether facing personal loss, burnout, or major change, her heartfelt insights and actionable tools help people find resilience, meaning, and joy, even in the darkest seasons. In addition to her writing, Lang designs grief workshops and speaks at events nationwide. She currently serves on the board of directors for Feeding San Diego and has previously served as chair of the Salk Institute Council and as trustee of Pacific Ridge School. She co-founded Prosumas Sleep Technologies and was a managing director at Health Point Capital. She has been married for 25 years and is a proud mother of 2 adult children and 1 spirited little dog. Welcome to the stage, Laing Rikkers.
Great to be
Welcome,
here.
Laning.
Thank you
Thank
so
Welcome.
you.
much.
Very
Thank you
happy
for
to be
Such a
joining
here.
us.
timely conversation.
I
Yes.
agree. I agree. We need all to be pulling in the same direction. It's not an easy moment in this country for sure.
hmm
Right.
Was there anything specific based on your expertise that you wanted to mention based on what we talked about before we dive into all the juiciness of this conversation, helping people with their beauty, meaning, and finding joy?
No, I mean, I certainly resonate with what you were saying in terms of, it's been a tough couple of weeks and,
Yeah.
trying to moderate what kind of information we're taking in and, stay the balance of staying informed without getting overwhelmed by it is a daily task, I think, for all of us.
Yeah. As
Right.
an expert who helps people with that, how do you usually help them navigate that line, wanting to be an informed adult in community, right? We talk a lot about community care while also being mindful of our capacity and intentional about sustainability.
For me, the line is typically around whether or not it's actionable. So, for instance, if you're in a location where there is something happening, for instance, this week, Minneapolis is very much on everyone's radar. I think if you're in Minneapolis and there's an opportunity to get involved and take a particular stand or a particular action, I think that's one thing. I think if and to be well aware of what's going on. I think if we take then Iran, fewer of us have an opportunity to take quick and immediate action on there. Maybe we can call our politicians or that sort of thing. But I think that to go down rabbit holes where we don't have the ability to actually change the course of things, I think, to stay informed, but at a higher level, and really only drop into the things where we can take action and that will feel meaningful both to the situation and for ourselves personally. And it's obviously case by case, person by person, but you can't go down all of the rabbit holes or you just get lost in the dark, I think.
I agree
Right?
with you.
That's all you'd be doing too, because there's
Yeah,
so
rabbit
many rabbit
holes.
holes to go down right now.
hmm
There certainly are. Crazy.
I love in your bio it talked about your spirited little dog because I have a rescue dog who is usually my office dog, but he's not
Mhm.
allowed in while we're live. But he brings me so much joy. What kind of dog do you have, Lang?
So I also have a rescue. He is a Chihuahua Terrier Dachshund something mix, and he's usually in my office too. But I sent him downstairs today because I thought being live didn't want to hear from him today. But he's wonderful, and I agree. He brings me so much joy, and when I'm anxious or spinning, he also sleeps with me, and he really calms me down. I find that connection and the the sense of something bigger and greater than just me, the aliveness and that spirit that runs through all of us. The Asians call it chi. I think is very powerful. And he's a big part of my life. So yes, thank you for including him in my bio.
Well, of course, of course. Well, I think when I think about pets and kids, right? And what I said before you came on about dishes and laundry never end, right? And it helps me personally to stay in the present moment. Like i- Monty is mine. He's a rescue dog that's half corgi, half Scotty, and 100% stubborn. That's the two terriers in him, right? But he has to be fed because he tells me, like, if I miss it, like, yeah, like so that the everyday things
Yeah.
that could be a chore but bring me joy and being really present with them. I know you talk about that in your book, and I want you to tell our listeners about your book and some of the things we were talking about ahead of time, because I think it's powerful when we think some of the things that we think are basic, like sleeping and eating,
Mhm.
um, are not just necessary, they're vital during
Yeah.
these times.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my book, I do talk about sort of the pillars that I refer back to, particularly when I'm feeling out of sorts. And often I find that one or more of them is a little bit off kilter. And if I make some subtle adjustments, I tend to feel a lot better. So the three foundational elements, as you mentioned, sleep. So it can be very hard to sleep when you've got anxiety or worry, concerns, all of these, loss, grief. And, to make sure that we're building in good pre-sleep routines in terms of, dimming our lights, not using our phones, less television, maybe taking a bath, all of those things that we know are very helpful in terms of supporting rest. Because as we all also know that when we don't have enough rest, everything heightens and feels really difficult to deal with. So that's number one. And then I call it sleep, eat, steep. So eating being really everything that we put into our bodies, not just nutritious food. Of course, that is also very important, but also really thinking about other types of things, alcohol, other kinds of substances that we might take in to numb some of the pain that we're experiencing, and to be really mindful of what's serving us best. I think it can be tempting to either have, a bit more ice cream or the second glass of wine or other things. And I think of it as, getting through something difficult. The quickest distance between 2 points is a straight line. And if you are, for instance, having too much alcohol, your line gets longer and problems don't go away. It just takes you longer to get through them and to the other side. So I think being really thoughtful about what we are putting in our bodies is important. And then the third one is steep, and that's being mindful, spiritual. If someone has a religious practice, I think to lean into something that puts things in a greater context in the universe, and gives us significance and perspective, and um, a sense of things of ultimate consequence. And I think that can be helpful, particularly when things are at sort of a peak crisis or they feel very heightened in the moment. I think it can bring some important perspective. And then the next things are walk it, talk it, write it. So walk it meaning, first and foremost, just get outside, go move, go walk. I think being in nature, seeing, the beauty in nature is really important. But I think any kind of exercise is really important to metabolize some of the energy. And, we know that the stress gets trapped in our bodies and wreaks havoc if we don't release it in some way. And exercise is certainly the best way to do that. Walk it, talk it. I think either with somebody professionally or with a good friend who is a great listener. I think that's a really key thing to make sure that we're processing and articulating. And a lot of times, just by articulating it, it softens its hold on us. And I mean, even just being with you today and talking through things that are going on, it helps me. And I know that I feel a little bit calmer, and I assume that your listeners, part of why they tune in is it helps them too. And then write it. I think you mentioned in your intro the importance of creativity. My book came out of a period of significant loss for me. And I wrote, there's poetry in my book. I worked with an artist, and the creative process to both work through how one is feeling about things, and then having ways that are sometimes nonverbal to communicate that is very powerful. And so um, I'm a big advocate of working with people and on finding creative outlets. And then the final thing is paying it forward. And I think staying attentive to ways that we can help other people, and it gets us up and out of ourselves. It provides us with a sense of meaning and purpose, and is really critical for the connections that are healing for us. So those are
I
those are
love
things.
that. We have so much we can talk about in there. The thing that popped up for me right away when you said pay it forward is, of course, Monday here in the States is Martin Luther King Day, and I'm in Atlanta, so big day here for us to celebrate Dr. King. And it's always about a day of service and paying it forward. And I think I love that you include that as part of your resources.
Mhm.
Shannon, what you thinking over there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was on the way to the library the other day, and apparently the library off of Main Street is on Martin Luther King Road, Martin Luther King Jr. Road. I said, look at that. Even though I'm not by Auburn Avenue in the retail space anymore, um, of course, still connected and it's right here. So I was thinking about that. I was also thinking about how Lang was talking about pay it forward. One, this is one of my favorite movies as far as just the idea of it. When I was growing up, seeing the movie. Have you ladies seen the movie?
I have.
Pay It Forward?
I
No, Christine, you have not?
I I can't
Okay.
remember. I've heard of it,
Okay.
but I'm not a huge movie person. I'm more of a book person. Remind me about it.
So the idea is somebody does something beautiful for you and you pay it forward and do something beautiful for somebody else. And what I was thinking about this slang, when you're talking about grief and joy and beauty, for me, the volunteer hours in Beta Club Society or band or National Honor Society in high school really helped remind me of how I felt when I was helping other people. Yes, I had a lot of stuff going on, right? Yes, I was brushing my teeth in the chemistry classroom. I talk about that when I go to the high schools to speak. We didn't always have food at home, but I still knew I still had a roof to go in and go under, though. There was still a bed there. We might talk about the water getting cut off, but mine was cut back on pretty quickly, given the situation and how those types of things usually go.
Mhm.
And I don't even know if I can fully articulate how much volunteering and giving to other people helped steady me in the craziness of the chaos
Yeah.
because I was able to remove it from our humanness. This person in front of me's humanness. They're not less than because they're in front of me right now and they need help, right? And I was not less than because I needed help or because we were in a situation. We
Mhm.
are humans in situations, and me being able to share kindness and somebody else being able to share it when I needed it, wherever it would come from. I still don't know if I can wrap words around how much it helps.
Mm. Yeah. I
Yeah.
I like the saying to focus on what you have versus what you lack,
Mm.
and we all have things that we can give. Um, and I think that to be really joyful is to be intentional about the the things that we're grateful for, right? And
Yeah.
and it then leaves room for us to give to others. And
Right.
so, yeah, it sounds like you really experienced that.
Yeah. And we talk about gratitude a lot. Christine, what were you about to say? You had something on your mind?
I was just thinking because we were talking about joy, and I had the privilege of going. Was it Saturday night in Atlanta? It was the second annual Jewish Storytelling Festival
Mm.
that was organized by my friend Audrey Galix, and
Mm.
she invited me to come and see this international storyteller named Dolores Sims. And the whole title of the program was Rejoice Regardless.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And it just filled me up. It
Mm.
was like to listen. She did this beautiful job of weaving stories from her childhood and Judaism and Buddhism, and going to, where did she go? Czechoslovakia. Like
Mm.
it was fairy tales and true stories, and it reminded me about what we do here with connecting with folks and how our stories matter.
Yeah, they
right?
do.
And especially in times like this, like our creativity and our storytelling and our connection, and to rejoice regardless, and to look
Yeah.
for the good, and to celebrate, and to share what we
Yeah.
have.
I was
Yeah.
thinking about you, the last day at the Tolls before they closed everything, Christine, and I was dancing for like 2.5 hours in this booth, y'all. I had my music on and I was getting it. This lady drove up. She thought I was on a little treadmill in there. And I was thinking about, I believe it's is it an Audre Lorde quote that difficult times call for fierce dancing?
It's
Mhm.
actually an African proverb
Okay.
that
I
is
knew we had
is
talked about it.
hard times call for furious dancing.
Yeah. I think about you
Mhm.
and Dr. Sheila K. Collins. So
Mhm.
Lang, I would love for us to talk more about how do we I know we talk about cultivating joy, right? So
Mhm.
joy is not just something you find, but something you're intentional about. But how do you do that when you are also, like Christine said earlier, holding that grief and you want to be realistic? We don't want to pull away and isolate from life and what's going on. How do you stay realistic and present in the difficult situations while also being intentional about the beauty, the meaning, and the joy?
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll start by sort of defining the difference between happiness and joy, and
Okay.
happiness being how you feel,
Yeah.
and joy being more about how you live. And we have a lot of choice in how we live. We don't always get choice in how we feel, but we have a lot of choice in how we live. And by that definition, joy really comes from meaning and purpose and love. And so those are options that are in front of us always. And so I think some of it has to do with certainly the self care that we talked about. I think it's very important for each of us to be self aware and take care of ourselves in order to be able to, have a stable platform to, be moving from.
Yes.
But I think it is about being intentional. It's about making sure that one is doing the doing the work. I think that joy is a job. It does not show up just on its own. I think that it comes from, a focus, it comes from a diligence, and that it is something ultimately that we choose. And so I don't say this in a trite way.
Hmm.
I think joy it's deep. I think it's always there for us. I think despite the chaos that's all around us, if we can get quiet and get centered, we know it's there, and we know I think for each of us we know where to find it. And if you look out the window and you see, a beautiful blue sky, sometimes you can find it in the beauty in nature that's around us, or you find it from your dog, or you find it, in a loving gesture from somebody at the supermarket. And so I think to partly to be paying attention,
Yeah.
and it's like I said, I think it's ultimately um, a balancing act of self care and intent, and making sure that we're enjoying ourselves and appreciating the smaller moments.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. And I have to tell y'all, over the holidays, I think I talked about it last week. I took everything out of my office Ling, and I washed my windows and I washed my curtains, and I just
Mm.
did a deep clean and a reset before the new year. But one of the joys I've been having lately is I think I have a pair of bluebirds nesting in my backyard somewhere, because I keep right out my office window. There's this flag that is up from Joe's birthday party. So it's got like this pole and this decorative flag, and this
Mm.
little bluebird just keeps coming right in my line of sight almost every day, and just hanging out there for a little bit.
Mm.
And I love bluebirds. I love all kinds of birds, but they're just so stinking tiny and cute and beautiful. And I always think bluebird of happiness every
Yeah.
time I see it. So it's like this little pop of, hey.
Well, and
Oh,
and I don't know if it's just that I'm getting old, maybe, but birds are so miraculous, aren't they? I mean, just the idea they that they can fly, that they can stay alive, that they are, colorful in the way I mean, and that there are so many different birds that have all managed to evolve and have their spot. I think somebody said to me the other day, that it was some quote about, you know, isn't it incredible that, you know, Jesus walked on water? And the response was, no, water is the miracle. And, I sort of feel that way um, about birds too. And just, just the whole sense. And, I think that that's a bit of the transcendence that I was talking about in terms of the spirituality and, and the putting things in perspective and, creating a sense of significance that is outside of our day-to-day worries and concerns, and nature is certainly a plentiful resource for that, and
Ugh,
so makes a big
absolutely.
difference.
That's such a good point.
Absolutely. Hey, y'all, this is a great place to take a break, take a deep breath, and hear from our awesome sponsors that make Women Connected in Wisdom podcast possible. Shannon, we are so grateful that Shayla Glow is the sponsor of the Women Connected in Wisdom podcast. And I wanted to take this moment to ask you, when you think about the people who use Shayla Glow, who are we talking about?
That's a good question. I think about three groups really. One, the group that's removing hair, right? So whether you're using laser hair removal, waxing, shaving, you got to make sure that you're putting back what you're taking out. The second group, I think about those with dry skin and the problems that that might cause, right? The scars, itching, burning, whatever the situation is, you definitely need all three steps, right? The exfoliation, making sure you're taking the dead skin cells off. The oil, putting in the moisture, and then the shea butter with the aloe, sealing it, helping you heal. Those things help both groups, right? And third, for the third group is those with chronic illness. The story is personally from cancer and different diseases that our population is dealing with on a daily basis throughout families as individuals. So I'm thinking about my mom and my grandmother and those around me with the same generational ties, right? And what positive, healthy habits we can start to make sure that we're maintaining our wellness, especially because the skin is like the cape, the exterior, the shield for your immune system. So with COVID, we have to be intentional about covering ourselves. And those are the groups I think about.
I love it. And you know what else I love about your product? It's all natural, handmade,
Yes.
and it smells great, y'all. So,
Yes, esthetician
yay.
tested. Yes, esthetician tested and approved. Yes. Yes. What about you? When you think about your company, what groups of people do you think about?
Well, I work with individual coaching clients, I work in community classes, and with corporate teams. And with all of them, I use a strength based, embodied approach to help folks connect with themselves and access joy, reduce burnout, and build resilience. Especially during these times, I think we need it. I think we need all the hashtag partnership power we can get.
Yes.
Now, when you talk about the walk, talk, and write, because
Yep.
I'm a huge believer in the walking and the moving and
Mhm.
moving every day. I went last night to Zumba. I try to go dancing with my husband once or twice a week because he loves Zumba.
I love that.
And y'all, I was so grumpy going in. And sometimes it's that transition. Like I'm getting off a day long of meetings and meetings I've loved, but I realized yesterday I had 3 or 4 that were kind of tedious. Like they were the kind of meetings that you had to do really hard focus and there was a lot of like it was really intense. And so I went late and so I had to transition really fast to get to Zumba. So I was so grumpy. And I know myself about this because I was like, if you move, especially if you dance, it's gonna shift,
Yeah,
right? It just
sure.
shifts. And to be in community. But the whole reason I bring that up is I wanna say, I think it's the new year, but I also think that these people are understanding this. And I mean, we probably had 100 people in that Zumba class yesterday.
Wow.
Like, it is, I mean, it is vital right now for people to be in community and also to be moving in community together, I think
Yeah,
is powerful.
I agree. That shift of and to be able to take the negative energy, move it around inside, and then put it back out as something beautiful and something that, particularly when you can do it with other people, it feels so great. It's hard to put words to what that is. But when you feel it and you experience it, you know. And I love that you do that with your husband.
Oh, yeah, we've always said we're celebrating 32 years, or are we 33 this year? But, we always said when we're dancing together, I mean, it's better than couples therapy. We like both, but,
Yeah.
dancing together, just the being parallel with each other is
Hmm.
important. So,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and
what
the
kind of
nonverbal
movements.
communication. Sorry.
Right, absolutely. No, just what you were saying about nonverbal. Shannon, what kind of movement have you been up to lately? I know you like to run.
Yes, I love running, and I'm actually relaxing on the running right now. It's January, so I fast every year, right? So I like to eat a good amount of food during the Daniel's fast, but I know that I eat more than I usually do. So I'm like, instead of running all these calories off, let me add my weight training back, make sure I'm building my muscle and mindful there. And it's part of my workout regimen that I had been missing. So I'm back on legs, right? I've been doing my side lunges, I've been doing my weighted abs, and I forget the question you asked me. What was the specific question you asked me, Christine?
We're just basically saying what kind of movement have you been doing?
Movement.
Because we check
Yeah.
in sometimes, and
Yeah, we
I
do.
know it's not always the same, like, different
Yeah.
movements for different times a year or where we're
Right.
at.
And I told you I was just dancing for 2.5 hours at work, so for me, it's
Love it.
been the increase of stairs. We went from the first level in the apartment to multiple stairs in multiple houses. So that's why I did the side lunges instead of the forward or backward lunges. And yeah, yeah, the weight. I've been, again, thinking about you and dancing, and I've been working at the computer, realizing how stiff I am. So even then, sometimes I've been adding it. So you know what? I feel like I'm really analytical, really honor student sitting here right now. Let me relax a little bit. Let me put on some music. That's
Dance
how I've
break,
been incorporating
it's
it.
important.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'll say a dance break instead of a water break. What about you, Lang?
I have sort of 2 regular things. Every morning, my husband and I get up and walk 2 miles first thing, and
Yes.
we really enjoy that, and
Mm.
gives us some time just to sort of reset for the day together. And then I go to bar classes, and so a really nice community of women that I do that with, and it full body strength.
Yes.
It's great. I really
Oh.
always feel it's never a bad idea either to walk or to go to the gym. So I love it.
I love that. Yeah, I've been adding my dancer stretches back. I did tap jazz and ballet when I was growing up. So I was like, let me work on my stretches and my points and all the different things. So I love that you go to bar classes. That's super
Mhm.
exciting. You
Yeah.
said you go once a week?
No, no, no. I go every other day. So
Okay.
yeah.
Nice.
So we walk every day and then I go to those classes every other day. So it feels like it's enough. It's good.
All right,
Yeah.
Lang, I have to ask you about your puppy. What was your puppy's name?
Mick.
Mick. Does Mick go with you on the 2 miles?
He does sometimes. He's a bit of a sniffer, and so we like to walk fast. And so, if we walk on the beach, then we can take him because there's not enough for him to sniff, and he really likes to go walk with us, and he can do the 2 miles. But when we go out just our front door in the morning, it we can't get him to move fast enough, so
Right.
we often leave him and then just take him on his own walk.
On these little short ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Monty's a low rider. And so he will go about a mile and then he starts pretending that he has to poop, even though he's already done that. And he's like, he'll about a mile is his limit. And then he's like, yeah, I'm done.
That's really funny. So what do? Do you have to just pick them up or
Well, it goes really slow. So, like, I don't usually do 2 miles, and I love 2 miles. So, I love that you do 1, and I need to do that. I need to shift that a little bit, and I was thinking about the other day adding 2 or 3, like, you the short walks. The other day, I just literally went up and because the sun was shining, and I was like, I got to get away from the computer. So I walked up and put a note in my neighbor's mailbox because they are from Iran. And when you said that earlier about, we making a difference, because I was like, what is actionable here? Same thing you were talking about. And
Mhm.
I thought, I'm just going to reach out and tell my neighbor that I'm thinking about them, because I can, I'm having feelings as I'm watching this, and I can't imagine what they're feeling. And so I like to stack things. Like Shannon's like, yeah, she does. But so I, put the leash on the dog real quick, wrote the note, went up the hill, put it in their mailbox, and came back. And it was less than 5 minutes. And Monty was thrilled. And I felt good because I did something and got out in the sun. But all that to say, yeah, no, I've had to Uber home one time with Monty
Oh,
before.
no. Oh,
Because
wow.
I was going to check on a friend's, pet, that they were out of town, and Monty loves their dog, and they're probably about a mile and a half, 2 miles away from me, and I thought, "Oh, it's a beautiful day. We'll just take a walk." And no, because by the time we made it to their house, it was very clear that he's like, "Yeah, no, I'm not doing that." So, my husband laughed so hard at me about calling an Uber for the dog.
Gotta do what you gotta do. That is funny.
Yeah, it was a hoot. But Shannon, what you thinking over there?
Thinking that I love you spending money on what sparks joy. And I know we talk about the Monty Uber, Ubers, whatever needs to happen. I know we talk about the cleaners in the house, but I love that. And
Mhm,
if that's what sparks you joy for the local vendors and the options, and that's what you want to use it for,
mhm,
that's what we're here for. Just like you were
Right.
talking earlier, apologizing for seeing basically the length of time you were talking at the beginning of
mm.
the podcast. And I'm like, we encourage all the people with the soapboxes and that talk a lot to be podcasters and talkers. So I'm big on the space that we want to take up. That's what I was thinking about for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Lang,
And
tell our listeners about your latest version of your book and when it's coming out. Tell them all about it.
Okay. So my new book, it's called Morning Leaves: Cultivating a Life of Beauty, Meaning, and Joy. And it is the second edition of this book. And it was originally written because I lost my younger sister very unexpectedly in 2019 in December. And what was notable about that was the timing right before COVID. And so we were fortunate in that we were able to, get together and have a big service and be together as a family right when she died. But then so quickly after, we were all separated and in lockdown. And, as you all experienced, no doubt, it, it was a terrifying time for everyone. I mean, hearing about people dying across the globe and really not knowing what we were dealing with. And so I was both in really deep grief and, sort of this existential crisis that we're in. And I needed to do something creative. I at first thought that I would maybe sculpt or make jewelry or something, but I was at home. I had no skills, no tools, no nothing. And so I had a copy of The Artist's Way, which I was familiar with by Julia Cameron, but I'd never read it. And my husband had read it years before and recommended it. But I finally had a bit more time because I wasn't traveling for work, obviously. And so I started working through that. And one of the things that was recommended was writing morning pages. So 3 pages every morning before doing anything else. And I was very diligent about going through. The book is 12 chapters, and she suggests doing one chapter a week. And I actually really also liked that structure. It gave me a little bit of framework that was helpful at the time. We all needed a little bit of structure in what was such a amorphous, big, weird space and time. And so that was one for me. And I started writing, and what came out turned out to be a lot of poetry, which I hadn't been a poet in particular in the past. And, but I had a lot to say, a lot that I was reflecting on about who I was, about what was important to me. And they all came out as botanical metaphors. And So I originally put them together to share with my children because I thought, gosh, what if something happened to me? I think that this is a good reflection of who I am, and they should at least know that. So I should get it out of my notebook. And so I typed them up and organized them. And then I kept rereading them and thinking, there's actually something more universal here that's not specific to me. And so I put them together and shared them with some of my friends who were writers and said, what do you think? Like, is there something here? Should I do something with it? And a number of them encouraged me to keep working on it and putting it together and add an introduction and some context. And the work really begged for um, visual art. And so I wish that I were a visual artist myself, but I'm not. And so I needed a botanical artist and I didn't know where to look for one. And so what do you do when you don't know what to do? You Google it or you did. Now maybe you do it on AI, but I Googled it and, is something called the American Academy of Botanical Artists. And there are, I don't know, 500 members, something. And they each had thumbnails of their art. And I went through all of them. And what I really needed was somebody who not only could do beautiful flowers, and most of these artists could, but I needed somebody who also had, the roots and the dead leaves and the thorns and some of the other pieces because the text really called for that. And I identified a woman named Kelly Leahy Ratting and found her on, her website and Instagram. And I reached out to her and said, have you ever illustrated a book? And she had. And so I said, could I send you my manuscript? And sent it to her. And she's like, this is what I want to do. And I was so fortunate because she's just been an incredible partner. She really understood what I was doing, and her art really matched the words in a beautiful way and elevated it. And it was one of those 2+2=5 kinds of experiences. And she did about, I don't know, 80 original paintings for the book. And it's the first edition won a whole bunch of awards, and we were very fortunate in that way to get recognized. And so, um, I was approached by another publisher to do a second edition um, to really broaden it from just death grief to the kind of grief that we're talking about today, these big losses that we're experiencing on more of a cultural level. And so there's a preface that kind of opens that aperture. And then I added, it's about 20 pages longer. I added an epilogue of sort of looking back on, sort of 5 years later, what have I learned, and really moving from grief to joy, and what have I found to be the things that were really helpful in that journey. And so I'm very lucky to get to share it with people. And it's I would say largely it has been a gift book for people that people will buy for somebody going through a difficult time. Maybe it's a death, could also be, a divorce, a loss, all
Mhm.
sorts of other kinds of situations where people seem to give it as a gift. And it's
It
been a wonderful
sounds
experience.
beautiful. It
Oh,
sounds beautiful. I can't wait to see it.
well, thank
2
you.
things I wanna say, 2 things is, first of all, can you tell us your sister's name?
Jenna. So it was her
Jenna.
formal name was Virginia, but we all called her Jenna.
Other Jenna. Thank you,
Mm,
Jenna.
yeah.
And, I don't know if we talked about it when we met for our coffee and chat, but I wanna connect you with Dr. Sheila K. Collins. She is, doing a lot of work with grief. She's one of our Women Connected in Wisdom, and she does the art of grieving. And she
Oh,
talks about, the power of writing and poetry and visual arts and music and voice, and how using the arts to help us heal. And she talks about, the neuro arts, which is a new field of science, about how they're really studying
mm.
how the arts make an impact on our brains, especially around grief and things like that. So that's right in your wheelhouse
Yes,
about
I
what
would
you're
love
doing.
to. I'd
And
love to talk to her.
I think she would love to find out about your book coming out and be a part of that too. So
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm familiar with a lot of the research that comes out that has come from the Foundation for Art and Healing, which is um, the head of it is at the Harvard School of Public Health, and they provide a lot of resources to people around, exactly that subject, and the idea of getting into a flow state and how important it is for people to be able to relax and then express themselves and have an artifact to share, and then the sharing is the connection. And it's it's very important. And it for me it's been very interesting because I didn't know. I have a master's in psychology, but I didn't know that much about this particular subject. I lived it, and now I've gone on to do more. I've done a program at the University of Wisconsin. I did a grief certificate program, and so I've now sort of come at it from of a more intellectual and academic standpoint. But um, just to have the academics um, confirm what I knew from experience has been a really nice way to sort of put the pieces together and affirm what I was feeling and living. And now it also gives me the confidence to be sharing and helping other people.
Yes, thank you so much for that. And that's what I wanted to loop back to. I think it's really interesting. I was gonna say funny. I think it's really interesting how you said someone with no skills. I'm like, wait a minute. Didn't I see Harvard? Hold on, let me go back to LinkedIn. You know what I mean? Like we have a huge list of stuff that you have done and are amazing at, you know. Um, but I also know how it feels when you get in those seasons and it's almost like a new place. And when we're talking about intellectual wellness, losing somebody really close to you puts you in a certain space, like we're sharing, right? With the
Yeah.
compound grief in the world and everything that has been going on in that season. And since then, I want to ask, what was it like for you when you started receiving awards for this piece of work that came from something so personal? What was
Mm.
that like for you and your sister, for you in that moment?
It was magnificent. It was, this was such a passion project and really came from the heart, and I really put myself into it. It was not a commercial endeavor. And so it was really gratifying to, um, I thought a lot about Brene Brown when I wrote it, about the whole sense of vulnerability, and to be an artist, I had no understanding before having tried this myself, how truly vulnerable you feel when you're putting your work out in the world. And it was so different from what I'd done. I, been in business, and I, had more of an academic leaning, and so to get acknowledged for that was very special, and particularly to be able to share it in that way with my sister, even though she isn't here anymore. The fact that she was so inspiring in all of it and getting me out of my comfort zone. And I think that was such a gift for me to be able to continue growing and trying new things. And, you get to a certain stage in life, and, you know, it, you have to be much more deliberate about saying, I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to step out of my comfort zone and try things. And I have found it to be fantastic. And now I want to do more and more of it. I just went to a glass blowing class, and I'm trying all sorts of
Nice.
things. And yeah, it feels so good, and you feel so alive trying different things, and being particularly creative things, to really be able to be expressive. I have a 21-year-old daughter who's home from school right now, and she wanted to buy I guess they're really popular, like these charms that people put on their bags, and
Okay.
she wanted to buy one. And I was like, no, 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 no. Like, let's go to the beat store. Let's make, I mean, if you want one, let's make one. And so we did, and it was such a nice thing to do together. And of course, now hers is completely unique, and it's hers, and she's proud of it. And um, I think for us to look for more ways to both be able to do things together, but trying new things. And, some of them don't work. Some of them are, you
Yeah.
have to toss them in the trash. But
Yeah.
it's, it, it feels really good. And I think for us to be able to, even as we get older, continue to develop ourselves and not get locked down and narrow is, it feels, it, it feels like a great fortune to be able to do that.
Mm.
Yes. I hear you.
Well, I also just think the act of creation when times are challenging or dark or tough, I think it's the antidote to
Mm.
what's happening in our world right now. Like that
Mm.
we put beauty out in the world purposely and
Yes.
create things with each other, for each other. I think it's
Yeah.
important.
And they can be small things. I think that it, even though some of the problems are very big, all of our individual small acts of generosity and creativity and beauty, they add up and they add up quickly, and we gotta we gotta keep doing them. That's the resistance, right?
Mhm. Thank you for
Well, and protest art is also a real thing. If you ever go to a protest and look at the signs, they're magnificent, a lot of
Mhm.
them.
Mhm. I love
Mhm.
that.
And I will also say, I know we're about to go to wisdom in action, is we think about, like, we're talking about creative art and music and dance. When I think about Sheila K. Collins, I think about where she grew up in a city immersed in art, right? But the separation when you were talking about the business, I see it as the same thing. If that's where you were being creative, that's also a gift, to create certain environments. We're talking about like the world now in this dark time. Sometimes a system or a business ran a certain way can feel that way to the teams in it. And we hear the feedback from different teams, and we see what happened last year with 2025 and these huge lists of people being let go. So when I
Yeah.
think about grief, I'm thinking about COVID. I'm also thinking about all these layoffs and the way that affects people's identity and the position of their families. So
Mhm.
I see your work um, at Harvard after, and now as an award-winning author and after, you know, synonymous in
Mm.
that way.
Mm. Thanks. Yeah, you're reminding me that when I business work is very creative work. It's a different kind of creativity, and I found that when I was working on the book that my business work, I found that it got better. And I don't know if it's the right brain, left brain, but
Yeah,
I found that I was calmer and more focused and had I was able to make connections that I hadn't seen before. And so I think that in whatever way that we are being creative, if we can try to use the other, it actually elevates both.
I agree with you. Okay, so I know we had just talked about wisdom in action for a second. Um, we usually let the guests go first, but like you don't have to go first. What are we intentionally working on ourselves for intellectual wellness, ladies? Or I can go first if you want me to. How do we want to do it this week?
Go for it, Shannon.
Okay, I got you guys. Okay. We've talked about so much. Let's see. Let me look at my notes.
While you're
I'm gonna
looking at
say,
what you gonna say?
I'm gonna say hashtag intentional routines.
Mhm.
Because that's what I'm about to flip again, right? The schedule's about to
Mhm.
change. So as the schedule gets ready to change next month, I am setting my pace this month so it doesn't feel as strenuous. Um, and I love letting you talk about your work and the routines and the cycle of things. So
Mhm.
that's what I'll say. Intentional routines. What about you,
Mm.
ladies?
What you think, Lang? If you had to
Well,
hashtag your wellness this week.
I am thinking about 2026 and saying yes to the things that really feel meaningful and joyful to me, and having the courage to say no to the things that don't. And I often am a yes person, and I'm trying to carve out time for the really important things.
Oh, I love that. I was just talking about that in my class on Tuesdays because I'm the co-author of Still Point, which is a playbook for caregivers to find ease and time to breathe and reclaim joy And our fifth skill of self-care is exercising choice. So you can say no, so you can say yes to the things that really bring you joy. So I love that you're exercising choice in
Mm,
2026. I'm going to say my wisdom in action is hashtag choose joy. Because
yeah.
talking about that joy is a conscious choice, even in the midst of chaos in darkness, that doesn't mean that the bad doesn't exist, but really purposely looking for the good and choosing joy, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do have one more question before you let our listeners know how to get in contact with you, Lang. I love how you talk about compassion, right? When you think about compassion with ourselves, self-compassion around grief, what do you think about?
Mm. I think about it on a day-to-day basis. I think we each need things for ourselves and it can change day to day. And I think to be gentle with ourselves and to be listening and paying attention both to ourselves and the people around us. And, to make sure that, we're not being soft on ourselves, but that we're being thoughtful and intentional. That's the main thing that I think is important is making sure that we're paying attention.
Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you
Yes,
for having me. This has been a real pleasure.
of course. Can you tell our listeners, were you about to ask something, Christine? Were you about to say the same thing? Got you. Can you tell our listeners where to find your book, where to connect with you if they're like, oh my goodness, I need help with grief. I've got to talk to Lang yesterday. Where should they go?
I have a website, which is my first and last name. So www.langrikkers.com. I'm also active on LinkedIn and I have an Instagram page, which you can get to through my website, or it's morning underscore leaves underscore poetry underscore and underscore poetry. So I'd love to connect with people. And the book is available for pre order now at all independent bookstores and also Barnes and Noble or Amazon. And
Mm,
I am going to be doing a number of events around the country and would love to see your listeners if I'm in the same town as them. That would be great.
that'd be super exciting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for your work in the world. We will put all this, if you're listening and driving or listening and running, don't worry. It's in
Eh.
our show notes. You'll be able to find it. We'll put all the connections in there. And Lang, thank you so much. Thank
Well,
you so
thank
much
you.
for
It's really been
creating
fun.
and coming and talking with us. And we're really grateful to be connected.
Well, likewise. And thanks for all you're doing.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, that was good. Timely, timely,
Yes.
timely.
Yes. I've been thinking about, I wonder where everybody is after this year, after the holidays. And I always feel like our guests are right on time. And hopefully, it lands in an easeful way and that you don't really need it. But in case you really need it, I love the amazing resources that we have. So that's super
Right?
exciting.
Absolutely. Anything we want to tell our listeners before we close episode 213?
Mhm. I would just say subscribe. We're excited about this 5-year anniversary, y'all. We told you about how we started, right? And we are
5
here
years.
now. But what we know, right, from this 36,000 downloads is that not everybody is subscribed. And if you're not a subscriber, that's okay. But if you want to get tuned in, if you want to know when we're going live to join us for questions for our guests, if you want to know what's coming up, make sure that you subscribe so that you get our information because we're working on a lot of really good stuff for you this year.
Right?
Yeah,
Well, and next week we've got a big announcement.
we
So,
do.
do you want to hint at it or do we want
Yeah,
to?
I'm gonna do what you want to do. What do you say? What you want to say to the people?
Well, our long-term listeners will know this time of year we start
Yeah,
talking about, are we doing another book? Are
Libro.
we? I don't know if you noticed behind me, like
Yeah.
one of my things I did for the holidays is I put our book covers up.
Yeah, y'all look at that. It looks
So,
good. I
okay,
love it.
look,
Yeah.
look,
Yeah.
and look, there's room for another one.
Oh, and it will be up there. Another Amazon bestseller. Here we come. Yes, and not that it's about that, but like talking to Lang about the award, being able to reach that was amazing for our ladies. Being able
Mhm.
to get to a point where we shared the stories was further than I ever expected to really get as a little girl that was like, you can save your stories for me, so I'm
Right?
super excited to be here and congratulations on 5 years.
Right? You too. You too. It's been, we have, more than anybody how much work that 5 years of podcasting, community building, 2 award-winning books,
Yeah.
connecting with thousands of women. Like it has been, and I think it's so needed more than ever, right? To
Mhm.
lift up women's voices and the work they're doing in the world
Yeah,
and to look for the helpers, to look for the good, to look for our resources. And I'm grateful to be connected as always to you, my friend. And
absolutely.
just, yeah, we got some
Yeah.
good stuff coming in 2026, y'all.
Right. And if you're male or male identifying, you got to the end of this, you're like, the ladies get to read. What about you are included on that, right? We do uplift women's voices. Yeah, it is true that our authors are women and female identifying, right? That's part of our vision. But if you are a child of a woman, right, which is everybody, you benefit from the 8 dimensions. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here and sharing. We'll be back live at 5 next week, Eastern Standard Time. In the meantime, be well. Be wise, be whole. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Women Connected in Wisdom podcast. On air live on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern via Facebook and YouTube. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be part of the conversation and get connected at womenconnectedinwisdom.com.